It's Chris, host of The Heart of the Story. Welcome to the show.
Special guest in the building. I'm Chris. We are live. We got
Okay.
the building. Matt Beaudreau. Is that how you say your last name? Beaudreau?
I don't think so, but it doesn't matter. I don't know how to say it either. It's okay. So I grew up in California. We said Beaudreau.
Oh,
But anytime I speak in France or Canada where they speak French, they say it totally different. And I think that's probably right. And I don't even know how to say it. So if it's close, I just go, yep, that's it right there. So
okay. Well, there you go. I mean, it's similar. I've got my last name is Schlerman.
fireman. Yeah. But I'm sure you get all kinds of good stuff.
I've heard all kinds of variations of my last name
Yeah, for
here.
sure.
And then I started actually talking with some German people, and they were like telling they had a whole different pronunciation as well. So like you said, and I'm like,
I believe it.
well, I mean, I don't have the accent you guys have. I'm assuming that's the right way to say it, so we'll go with it.
Go with it.
We'll go
All
with it. So, my dude, it's good to have you on the show. What we do on this show is we always start with the beginning of your life. So let's start with the very beginning of your life, where you're from in your childhood,
right.
and we'll start there, and we'll just let it go where it's supposed to go.
Cool, man. Well, I'll give you some bullet points and then you take it wherever it helps people the most. I'm a Bay Area kid and born and raised there and a middle class family growing up. It was an interesting part of the Bay that I had friends who were into gangs, early on. And I also had friends whose, parents were multimillionaires. And so that I learned later was a gift, to be able to get along with. I had somebody tell me one time, I think you can get along with inmates, in-laws, and infants. And I said, yeah, I think I can, and a lot of it was just exposure to that. So grew up in that middle class area. Mom and dad ended up getting divorced relatively early on. Dad was a little bit of a rougher dude to be around, but nothing crazy. I learned very early on that
Yeah.
I wasn't. I'm not going to say that I was in. I didn't think I was intelligent, but I learned that I could see patterns really early on, and that's why I was able to connect with people. I saw the patterns that even the gangbangers or the rich kids, like I could see the things that were similar, so I knew how to pour in and help, and I always had a heart for helping others. But I also saw patterns in things like school. I learned very early that there was a game being played, and I knew how to play it. So cool, I'll get my straight A's, and I won't have to think about it. I won't have to work at it. I'll just get that. That way I can focus on what I want to focus on, which for all I could figure out was girls and sports, and that was it. So great as far as that childhood.
Yeah.
Harder when you get to be a little bit of an adult or a late teen and you go, wait a second, life doesn't actually demand that I play that game. I actually have to know a little bit about myself. Oh, shoot, how am I going to figure this out? Right. And then the real learning begins. But childhood at a high level was that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, we have very similar backgrounds.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Santa Monica.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was in government housing in Santa Monica, which is wild that they even have government subsidized housing in Santa Monica, which is a very affluent area. But people don't realize that there is a poor area within Santa Monica, and just outside of Santa Monica, less than maybe only 8, 9 miles away, you can get to Compton and Inglewood.
Yep. Yep.
Like
And it's a whole different world right down the street.
literally, like
Hmm.
within 15 miles of each other, you've got Malibu and Compton.
Yep.
Wild.
Yep, which is wild. It's crazy. People don't realize if you're not from California, you don't realize how massive California is. I mean, it is a massive piece of territory and how it's multiple states all at once, right? And people are like,
Mhm.
oh, people think California, whatever they think that is based on TV, and a lot of it is that Santa Monica sort of vibe, but the
Mhm.
reality is it's multiple worlds all in one, and sometimes, like you said, in 15, 20 square miles. You've got 4 or 5 very different worlds going on, right next to each other at the same time. It's kind of crazy that way.
Yeah, beautiful though. I love growing up within that kind of environment. I mean, when one like in Venice Boulevard, it's hard to identify the billionaire from the homeless man.
Yep.
It really is because they dress the exact same, they look the exact same. It's like it's very hard to kind of identify, which makes you not judge as much. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not gonna just judge off appearance or the way someone talks or the way someone, is because it's like
Don't know.
I don't know. You
Mm-hmm.
can't know.
Mm-hmm.
You genuinely can't know. So then, and that makes sense. So then, from that background that you had, where'd you go from there? I mean, from the did you end up going the traditional college route, or did you end up going the
Yeah,
way
that
college
was
route?
the whole thing, man, is and knowing that I'm in education now, some of the people that reach out a lot are people that are like, well, you know, education's not working for my child. It's not working. And sometimes that means it's not working. A lot of times that means the child is not working or the parent is not working to lead the child. That usually, I always get into definition of terms. And so that doesn't always mean that. But I'm quick to tell people too, so there's a danger in the system working well for you. And so I was one of those where the system worked just fine because I figured out how to do well in it. But I graduate and go, ooh, but I don't know me. I have nothing to provide to the world other than I can get a good grade. I can get good grades on a report card. So I went to college because that's what the next step was, right? It's like, I guess that's where you go because that's what everybody else is doing. And then there's multiple years of the same thing. It was still the same game. I got better at sports. I got better at girls. And I worked my way through it. And I paid for college. I moved out at 17 and I put the work in and paid for things. So I had that going for me, but
Yeah.
it was the same story, right? You just get better. Now I'm better at it and I'm in debt a little bit, but I still played the school game, but it didn't tell me who I was. So yeah, college right after high school.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to UC Davis for a year and then went to Chico State is where I ended up graduating from. Which, if anybody knows anything about Chico State in California, it's got a reputation. You can definitely find yourself having a very good time in Chico. And it was a good experience and good people, but I wouldn't say looking back on it, there were a lot more uses of my time that would have been more beneficial. But it's part of my story now.
Few spots are better than Chico. I'll, I've
Have a good time. Yes, sir.
had a good time in Chico before that. There's a few spots better on this earth than Chico.
Mm.
Um, Dude, that's fantastic. No, I love the when you bring up like going down the conveyor belt,
Yeah,
uh,
man.
rat race of life. I'm sure you're familiar with like Peter Thiel
Yeah,
and
very much
like
so.
his story that he had where it was like he went down the conveyor belt of life that
Mm.
took him through law school and then he became like a big corporate attorney and then he had a moment where he was all like woke up and said this isn't where I want to be.
That's right.
Why
Yeah.
am I here? Why am
Oh.
I why did I take out like $200,000 of student loan debt? Like now I feel stuck. I have to be a lawyer because I have to pay off this debt, and I have to be a good lawyer so I can not just pay this debt off, but then like actually like achieve the societal goals that people say that I have to hit,
Yeah.
and like wake up and realize like why am I on this path?
Well, and the only reason Peter Thiel's story is different than others now is because he realized it and then actually did something about it, right? Because that whole concept of going through that conveyor belt and getting to a point where you go, I wasted so much time. Why did I? Why did I? Why did I? That is a story for so many people. The
Yeah.
vast majority just sit at that point and go, gosh, and now I'm stuck
Yeah.
versus let's change it, right? Because it's hard to change it. And so he decided he was going to change it.
Well, yeah, no, he decided he was going to freaking change and blow up the whole system and change it. To your point, I mean, I see so many people right now where it's like, I think that's the difference between the mindset of, being an agent who acts versus an agent who is acted upon
Hmm.
from a spiritual sense, not, like getting into the weeds on that. Like, I see these people who are doing 20, 30, 40 year careers at a company, and then the economy erodes, they
Yeah,
get laid off, and
sure.
devastated.
That's right.
They're absolutely devastated, or they're in a spa where it's like they're in a marriage and they stay in the marriage only for the sake of the finances or the societal pressures, right? Or whatever it may be. There's people who are in a spot in their life where they're literally only in that spot because they're looking for keeping up with the Joneses, or looking for just peace or safety or whatever it is.
Safety, right? And what they're really looking for is the illusion of safety, because it's not actually safe. It's the least safe kind of way to go, but they're after the illusion of safety, right? There's this saying, a bird's born in a cage think flying is an illness, right? Because they feel like they're safe within that cage. And what they're really holding on to is familiarity, right? Because there's an illusion of safety that comes with familiarity. The problem is they start to confuse familiarity with truth. And that's where there's the issue, because then they'll hold on to that familiarity at all costs. They hold on to a known and well-defined slavery because the concept of sovereignty and freedom is too ambiguous for them to go after, and it feels unsafe. And that is the issue for so many people. It's that.
It's that. No, it literally is that. It's that illusion of safety. And that's where people find like I'll use myself as the example, actually. I'll do this so I'm not throwing anyone else under the bus. I had a false faith in the institution of banks and
Mm,
education and
mm,
healthcare for
mm.
years. Like so many of us, we don't realize there are certain institutions that we have a false faith in. We believe that they are doing the right thing for us. We need to continue to back them, support them, and just believe the narratives that they push, right? I had false faith in news, government, false faith in all these groups for so many years. And then that moment when I actually wake up and I realize these groups they've given me a false sense of safety, because my
Mhm.
life goes down slowly. It's like a slow, painful decline, but I feel like I'm safe. I'm not actually safe.
Mm.
Well, my quality of life has been this or like this. Quality of life should be going like this.
That's right. Well, and that, so when we talk about, Seth Godin asked me years ago, he says, what should education be for? And I'd been in education for a long time at that point. And I was like, geez, man, nobody's actually even asked that question, which should be the foundational, fundamental question of education, period. Right. So what should it even be for? And ultimately what I got to, and I hold on to this day, it should be for sovereignty. Sovereignty ultimately means that nothing else from an external capacity can impact you. Nothing else has the right, nothing else is allowed to transfer a lower way of life to you without your consent, right? You don't have sovereignty if a system can take away blank, fill in the blank, right? If the system can take away your ability to provide for your family, if the system can take away your right to, take care of your health as you see fit, if the system can force you into a rabbit hole of not questioning anything about your spiritual journey and learning anymore, because like, no, 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 these are the answers, and if you don't repeat these answers, you're out of here. If a system can control you that much, you are not sovereign. So what gets you out of that is being educated on what the other options are. And then, part of being educated, I think, speaks to what you were saying at the beginning, is being willing to take action and move yourself forward. That's what sovereignty means. That's what alleviates all of this, is you taking that responsibility of taking care of those things. So I'm right there with you, man. That false sense of security that comes from these institutions, when it's taken away like that, you see that emperor has no clothes.
Yeah, and this doesn't have to be a thing where it's like, oh, we're just speaking negatives. We're not speaking negatives. We're speaking positives. We're speaking the concept of taking the chains off, being actually free for mental slavery and
100%.
slavery. This is a joyful thing to talk about. Like we're we're getting set free. This is
That's,
amazing.
that's exactly right. See, peace is a byproduct of that, right? So people, like, we talk about this whole mental health crisis and all we do is we hammer home, hey, talk about your feelings all day, talk about how bad things are, talk about how bad things are for you, talk about how bad things are in a relationship. That's garbage, man. There is peace that comes as a byproduct of you taking back the pen that writes the script of your own life. Joy and peace of mind are byproducts of that. That's why sovereignty is so important. I don't want people to be sovereign so that they can do what I do or think what I think. I want them to be sovereign so they can build the life they want to build and get the joy and the peace that come from that. Because I think factory settings, when you get back to that joy and peace, then you're like, man, cool. And I want that for others and I want to help them get there too. I really believe that's, most people, we forget that because we're so wrapped up in this garbage that we've trained ourselves. So yeah, I couldn't agree more, man.
Yes, 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 yes. All right, I'm going to go on a limb. This is a personal,
Yep.
it's just from the book of Chris.
Yeah.
There is also the institution of religion,
Sure.
and religion was I feel like the concept of various religions is also the basis of division.
Yeah. If
Not the concept of truth
yeah.
from or the concept of God's existence. No, but the
Right.
concept of creating these like established religions
Yeah.
that are that are built with the intent to just divide and separate people from each other rather than uniting all under the same banner of truth and righteousness under God. And I feel like there are certain things where it's like to that point of creating that freedom. There's a couple of things that I feel like get twisted all the time. It's like first off is like worthiness, the
Mm-hmm.
concept of worthiness. What that word shouldn't exist. All right, let's rephrase that. Let's rephrase that term.
Mm-hmm.
Worthiness is a description of the concept of value and love. Are
Mm-hmm.
you valued and loved by the Almighty? That is a 100% unalienable right that you have and is just truth. You are valued and loved by God. That doesn't change by who you are and what you do. He loves you regardless. Like I look at my own son and I'm like, I love him regardless. And I already know the love. I already know the feelings from God are even intensified from my, my example of him with me and my son, right? You know what I mean? So it's like that's number one. And then number two, there's also this concept of like I see this all the time where it's like people are like waiting to be in the presence of God. They're waiting for this magical moment of like I'm gonna do this checklist and to then get in his presence. And once I do this checklist, I'm good. No, you can be in his presence now on this earth right now, this moment in time right now. The only thing keeping you back is shame and guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Shame and guilt is keeping you back. Shame and guilt is the lowest energy signal of all energy signals that can be resonated out to the world. Authenticity is number one, right? And then shame and guilt's at the bottom, and it's powered by the lower energy signals of the body. So it's like we create this shame and guilt program of you can't be in the presence of God. No, you can be in the presence of God now. Like he wants you to be in his presence. That's where prayer comes from. He wants you to communicate with him. If he wants you to communicate with him, does he not want you to be able to be in his presence now?
Yeah, I mean yeah. I love all of what you're talking about there. What's interesting about religion from a systemic standpoint, I think religion and somebody can fact check, I always want people to go look up it. You don't have to believe a dang thing I say. I don't, that's not my role. My role is to get you to think, right? Socrates says, I can't teach a man anything. I can only make him think. That's my role. I don't want to teach anybody anything. I don't want anybody to believe anything what I say. Just go verify for yourself and go wrestle with it yourself. But there's a Latin word religare, right, where religion comes from. It means to bind. Like that's what it means. So if the understanding of God and who God is supposed to be for a spiritual freedom,
Mm-hmm.
are we going to find that in a system that binds you? And I understand people will play word salad and they'll go, okay, well, that just means you're bound to him. Okay, cool. Well, if you're bound to him, why does your life not look more free? Because that's really what it is. The problem with religion is my religion versus your religion. Why? Because I've got these answers and you've got these answers, and we're not willing to talk about it and get curious again and get back to asking questions. Forget questions. we have the answers. No, we have the answers. Well, then I guess we're enemies, right? Let's fight. And what's interesting is if you go back into the biblical, like Hebrew, right? Jacob wrestles with the angel and he becomes Yisrael, right? Yisrael means those who contend with, who engage with, who wrestle with God, means while you're on this journey, continuously asking questions. And also, how freaking arrogant do you have to be to go, no, I've got God all figured out and I've got the right answer. I've got God's answers. I do. You don't. I do. That's arrogant as all get out. God himself is saying, Israel, he's going to wrestle with it. Wrestle with me. Keep asking questions. The more questions you ask, the more things you'll find, but you'll mostly find that you've got so many more questions. What if we all approach things like that? Then there wouldn't be this me versus you, the Bloods versus Crips, like there wouldn't be that. It would just be, okay, let's get curious together and we can all dive in together to find out who God is. There's a whole lot of freedom in that kind of curiosity that is not found when you have to have the right answers and you're not allowed to question those. That's garbage.
I agree. Definitely agree. I feel like this stems from Satan, though. Personally, my personal take is, again, Book of Chris, is wherever you find these institutions, which is it's this belief of this organization that runs and controls whatever belief or thoughts that people have to basically adopt and just kind of go down the conveyor belt of,
Yeah.
and concept of different religions. That's from Satan, right? Like from the very beginning of man, it's the idea of you will find lots of religion. If you're looking for religion, Adam, you will find lots of religion. You will find scripture. You will find scriptures mingled with the philosophies of man. Hence, where you
Mm,
all of these different religions. So it's like,
mm. So man, I didn't know we were going to go down this rabbit hole, but I love it. Right. So I love this. I had no idea we'd go down this rabbit hole, but I think this is
bro,
great. You just said, right.
this is literally what I thought was. This is who I am. Like I will go down this rabbit hole day.
No, so good. So you mentioned, Hasatan, right? And again, that's a title specifically. So Hasatan is a title. It literally translates to the enemy, right? And so it is not his name. It is a title that describes who he is and what he's all about. But think about how he comes at you as the enemy. He doesn't. We like to paint him this picture as the boogity boogity man, and he's big, scary, and he's like, I want to come in and ruin everything. I'm going to wreck your life. Go back to the garden, right? Adam and Eve didn't go, snake, So I don't think there was an actual snake. I think he came in as this beautiful creature, right? But he's called the serpent. And he came in this beautiful creature and was just like, hey, look, I'm on your side. I just want you to just think about that. And he gave a whole lot of truth and then just a little bit of like, what if we just kind of turn things and twist things just a little and we turn you over here? And that actually looks pretty good, right? And if you've got two airplanes that take off from the airport at the exact same time, and they're going the exact same speed, but there's a 2% difference in their trajectory. Guess what? Long enough flight, they end up in very, very different spots, right? And so he comes at you as everything beautiful and everything that sounds right. Remember, what was his ultimate goal? It was to be worshiped. It wasn't to be hated and feared. It was to be worshiped. And we've got a whole lot of people who hate and fear others, but worship what their religion tells them to worship. Neither of those end up with, let's all get together and figure out who God actually is, right? It's a really good plan, actually. Like there's this concept of, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world that he doesn't exist. I don't think so. I think it's that he convinces the majority of the world to worship him whether they believe him or not.
Oh, dude, facts. I mean, literally, there's. I love the whole degrees thing. There was an amazing talk by Elder Uchtdorf of the LDS Church where he talked all about, because he was a pilot professionally, and he gave this talk that was all about the importance of being staying on course, and if you get even a couple degrees off course, the
Hmm.
the difference in the destination, how it will lead to hundreds of miles of separation from the
Yeah.
ultimate goal that you were supposed to get to where you end up going. You got to be very careful because Satan will work from that standpoint of what you're saying of, oh, let's just get you 1 degree off. And to your,
Mhm.
I think, I believe Satan was the originator of narcissism, pride, ego, controlling, and that's the victim mentality mindset of like, I am a victim. I'm a victim of my circumstances. I'm the victim of these other people. Why am I not the center of attention of all things? You know what I
Mm.
mean? That mindset, and we see this in society. So many folks right now. It's literally the thing that's dividing us as a people more than anything. And I think it's I see as creating so much hurt and pain in the world. I mean, divorce is at an all-time high. We already know the root of it. You
Mm.
know, like
Mm.
anytime you see a a family that's going through something, or you see a person that's going through something, if you see somebody speak from a spot of peace and love and let's unify and unite and try to create healing, it's they're speaking of truth and righteousness. If they're speaking from a spot of defend yourself, or you're a victim, or trying to, speak up, like kind of like amplify your pain, be very careful of that, because that is a dangerous road. They're not speaking of truth and righteousness. They're speaking of the enemy right now, and they're trying to wove in their little seeds of doubt and divide you asunder. And I see that with religion, and I see that with all kinds of groups. Not to say that there's truth out there, but you got to be careful with where you find that truth. And you can find truth all over the world.
You got to think, man. That's the whole thing. We have all these buzzwords, especially in education, of like, oh, we want to build critical thinkers. You know what? Cool. That's a great concept. It's a great idea. Can we start with thinking? How about we just start with thinking, and then we'll get to critical thinking? Because most people do not think. They just react. They look for other people to tell them what to think
Yeah,
and what to think it. Right. And that's the beauty of these big systems, is it takes the ownership off. Somebody else is going to tell you what to do, when to do it, how to think, and when to think it. And then they're just going to ask you to do that, and you get yourself comfortable with that. So you don't even get to the point of thinking, never mind critical thinking. And that's, all of these systems um, and people get it mixed up. They go, oh, well, you hate teachers. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I don't love the system of schooling that we have, and I don't believe it is set for education. And I don't hate good humans who are working in the system or who send their kids there. Like, you have to be able to parse those out and think through those things, right? So it's what we have to understand that the systems are there to perpetuate themselves. McDonald's as an organization is there to make sure McDonald's continues to make more money. Nothing wrong with that. Great. Go get it. And guess what? There's great people who work at McDonald's. Also, it's not a system I engage with. My kids and I and my family and my wife we don't need it. And I'm not saying I hate the people who work at McDonald's or I hate people who eat McDonald's. I don't think it's a great idea, so we don't touch it, right? And it's like you can have all of these, but that takes thinking. It takes thinking to have all of these realizations. It takes conversation and the willingness to have somebody who may have an opinion that's not your own and be okay with that. It takes all of those things for us to recognize that. But man, we're so, again, just programmed by all these things to battle in some way. And it's not a fruitful battle. We can see that.
definitely vibe with that. Today, the society's got a lot of, the education system is kind of built with right now with the intent of producing kids that, to your point, are very simple minded. Like, just very simple. It's like they try to define, they try to create this belief in you of black and white, and to not see the gray. It's black and white. Things are very straightforward. A equals B, and then that's it. And then there's no possible other scenarios where A could maybe turn into D. You know what I mean? Like you can't think about it. It's like as soon in like the legal system, as soon as somebody's charged, they're instantly convicted.
Mhm.
Simple, just brain connections. Not let's go down the road of context. Let's go look at the scenario. Let's go look at the situation, because we're not teaching people to even use those brains, which again, the Satan thing, because that brain was one of the most powerful things that God gave us.
Yeah.
It's the most powerful things he gave us. So how do we dismantle it all? Let's erase the brain. Let's
Turn
get
it
people
off.
not use their brains, and we can then enslave them. Um, I liked your. So when was this moment for you when you kind of had this wake up, this like realization time of like that put you down this path? You were going down your own rabbit, your own conveyor belt, like your own Peter Thiel story. when did you have your wake up moment? Like he woke up one day when he was in his law office, looked around, and was like, I don't know why I'm here. When was that for you?
Yeah, I had a couple. It was it was there wasn't just one defining thing that changed everything. There were a series of realizations over a number of years that ultimately went, okay, got it. Here we go. And don't mean got it like I've got all the answers, just mean got it. Here's where I need to go and let's see what I don't know. There were a number of these. Again, the realizations early, the seeing the patterns, seeing the games in school end up playing into something far more than I realized. And but 15, and this sounds super cliche and super cheesy, but I don't care because it is the way it happened. 15 on my first date with a girl, and I thought I was just the man on campus, you know, because she's 18, right? And captain of the cheerleading team. I'm like, she's a senior, I'm a sophomore. Dude, I'm the man. I'm like, this is great. First date, cool. Let's go to the movies. And we're sitting there and we're watching a movie called Braveheart, which again, this is why it sounds cheesy, but it is what it is. And there's a part in that movie where it's not right. And the more the movie keeps going, the more I'm like, I don't actually even care. Like I was actually really drawn into this story. I'm like, I don't even care that this girl's here. And the part towards the end where he's like, every man dies, not every man lives. I stopped right there as a 15-year-old young man and went, oh my gosh, okay. He's so right. It was, and I didn't know about, I didn't know about Thoreau and most men lead, lives of quiet desperation. I didn't have that concept yet. And so he said that, and I went, oh my gosh, he's right. Most men they just exist for as long as they exist, but there's not actually much of a life that's there. They'll repeat the same year 30 years over and they'll call it a life. And I looked at the men in my own circle, as a young man and went, oh my gosh, they're doing that. They're doing that. They're doing that. This is garbage, right? So there was like, I've got to do something different. I don't know what that means. And then another moment later, as I read this book, and there's this moment where a guy is, got a gun to his head, and then he changes his whole life because the guy told him, if you don't change your life, I'm going to come back and I'm going to take you out. And he actually goes forward to go change his life. And I'm like, man, I've had so many experiences that should have woken me up to where I go, okay, well, I need to do something different, but I get sucked back into this sleepy, just I'll do what everybody else is doing. Why? That's not supposed to be me. I don't think life is supposed to work out that way. So I have a number of these events that ultimately, as I'm going through my career in education, and I've seen kind of all the different layers of the game from the university level to the public school level to the public school administration to the private school administration, all that. I end up reading this book. It's really more of a manifesto by Seth Godin, and it's called "Stop Stealing Dreams." And at that point, I was a school administrator, and I read that, and it was like, man, that is what I am literally going down that path where I'm going to be stealing the dreams of young people, and I'm going to send my own kids into an organization or a system that is going to steal theirs as well. I can't look myself in the mirror if I believe that, and I do believe that, and I can't do that to my own children. So
Yeah.
it's time to get off the pot, build something, or get out and figure out something completely different. And I decided then and there in the parking lot of a school that I was going to go ahead and build something. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I needed to build something first and foremost for my own kids. That was the biggest, but it was a culmination of all of those.
Dude, I love that. Were you at what point in your career were you though? I mean, were you already like down the path of being in education for several years
I mean,
or
I was a school administrator. I'd been at, I'd worked at Stanford for a while and seen the game
yeah.
of higher education there. I'd been a public school teacher for a number of years. I'd been a public school administrator. I'd been a private school teacher. I'd been a private school administrator. And I was on my, fourth or fifth year as a private school administrator. So this is, um, there were some years in the game at that point. More importantly, though, I was a father,
Yeah.
and I was about to send my own kid, my oldest into the fire, and there was no way I was going to let her do that. So I had to do something.
Yeah, I love that, dude. It's kind of motivated by the love of your own kid and saying like I've done this for several years, but I can't do this to my own. I like that principle a lot.
There was no way that I was going to do it to my own, and that again, there was a moment where I committed to my children before they were even born. And again, it's this cheesy moment, but it's like there's this moment where I was watching something unfold and I just had this overwhelming love for my kids that I did not have. And I decided at that point I was going to be the father that wasn't the living cliche of like, well, I do all this for my kids, but his kids are miserable. No, I need to make sure that I am being the person they need to see so that they can become who they're designed to become. I committed that to them before they were born. And to me, that was just another step in that commitment. That's all that was.
Dude, I freaking love that. How old are your kids now?
13, 11, and 8.
Nice.
Yeah, it's the best, man.
They're in some good age groups.
They're freaking amazing. There's no such thing as a bad age group. If you've done it right, I really don't think there is, man. It is just
Sure.
so fun, man, just to watch them continue to grow. And they're the most amazing humans. And it's not because I'm an awesome dad and my wife is an awesome mom. And it's not because of that. It's partially because we're on our own journeys of being the best possible versions of ourselves with all the imperfections that come along with that. Because there's no such thing as a perfect man, woman, or parent, or, that should be obvious. But pursuing perfection can still remain your standard. But
Yeah.
we work very hard to be the people we need to be, and we work very hard on helping the environment be conducive to them figuring out who they are, right? Not being and the best possible version of that, not being versions of mom and dad, although there's elements of that are going to happen, but being who they are. We control the environment. G.K. Chesterton said, education has nothing to do with subjects. It has everything to do with a transferable way of life. So any environment you're putting them in, anybody you're putting them around, for those parents that are listening, you're giving a nod to that person or to that system or to that environment, transferring its way of life or his way of life or her way of life to your kids. And so we're just very intentional about curating those environments. Who are they around? What are they doing? What opportunities they have? What challenges can we make sure that they get to overcome so that we can transfer that way of life to them that we think is going to be most beneficial? And that's how we've approached it, man. And they're freaking ninjas. They're awesome.
I freaking love this. Yeah, I always love I've only spoken to you now twice, and I just feel the vibes because I freaking love the heck out of you, dude. We're on the same page with so many of these things. I feel like all of us guys who've gone down that kind of path, kind of find a commonality and an alignment with each other. Because I myself, I haven't actually spoken on this on the podcast yet, but I'm about to right now. I've gone through some stuff this year that's been wild. I had a criminal charge thrown at me and a judgment thrown at me for some past business stuff. And I'm going through the process of, going through the various legal processes and sorting it all out and handling it. And then I've been going through a 6-month separation at this point from my wife and going for, it's turning down the path of divorce. And I had that moment when my wife left a couple days after she left, and I didn't see my kid for I think the first week or two of her leaving because she went on a trip somewhere. So I didn't really see him for like a first week or two, and had to have that moment myself where it was like look in the mirror and I was like, are you something he can look up to, or am I something that this kid is going to be ashamed of?
That's right.
It's not too late to change.
It's never too late.
It's never too late to change. And it was like, I don't have to care what anyone else thinks. I don't have to care if anyone thinks I'm making these changes for the wrong reasons or if I'm making these changes to be fake or whatever. I don't care. I don't have to care what anyone says about anything. It's just, am I going to put this kid first? Am I going to make these changes so that I can be a better version of myself and let the rest fall where it may?
Right, man. You're under no obligation to be the same man you were 5 minutes ago.
No.
That's it. And it's weird that culturally we've taken a look and we'll go like, how old am I? I'm 44. I reconnected with somebody because of business. I reconnected with somebody that I went to high school with. I haven't spoken to since I don't have many friends that great people. Life takes you different ways, and I don't have many people that I talk to that I went to high school with. And reconnected. I haven't spoken with him since we graduated, which was 27-ish years ago, I think. And like, man, you changed a ton, man. A lot of stuff has changed. Of course. Like, isn't that a weird concept to think that in 27 years, not much would change? You're relatively the same there are certain things that stay, and when you really hold on to values, like those things stay. But if you're living your life, of course you are going to change. Ideas are going to change, and your physical body can change, your articulation can change, your energy can change. You're like you, to it blows my mind that culturally we've accepted that, like, yeah, this is just who I am. This is just how I am. This is just how I was built. This is just how okay, cool. And then what did you do with it? Because who do you want to be? What do you want to do?
Yes. Yes. Dude, if you go through a period of time and you haven't changed, that's the bigger red flag.
By far the bigger red flag. And again, not talking about values. We're not talking about, if you get to an element of what you think is truth, that's great. You'll hold on to that for longer. But by the way, while you're holding on to it, you better question that more than anything else, just to make sure you come back to the same conclusions. And you better be brave enough to change your mind if you see something that pulls you a different way. Or since Scott Card said, we believe all the things we really, or we question all the things we really believe, except for those which we really believe, and those we refuse to question. And I love that. You got to continue to question. So the values can stay the same, but man, life, you can't live the same life 20 years, 30 years in a row and call it a life. That's an existence.
Love that. No, dude, we're on the same page. I love that you just quoted Orson Scott Card, by the way. His daughter was my seminary teacher in high school.
How cool is that?
Yeah, he's a good dude. I don't know if he still does, but he taught at Southern Virginia
Okay.
University for a while, in the English department. Um, I mean, that's just wild if you had him as a teacher.
Wow, man. No doubt.
One of the best authors. I love
Brilliant.
stuff. Um, I remember Ender's Game was one of the first series I ever read,
Mm.
and I know he's a divine guy. I love you quoted Orson Scott Card. Uh,
Really.
so my dude, so then that makes sense. So for those who don't know about Apogee, I think I said it right this time.
Yeah,
Apogee.
you nailed it. Yes, sir.
For those who don't know about it, let the world know about it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. Apogee was something that came out of seeing a need for young men to have good men around them, but it has evolved into so much more. And I want people to understand that before I even describe it, because the reality, there's a lot of people that again are like, okay, this is kind of what I think I want to start this business, and I think I want to do this, and I think cool, start, do it, and don't give up. And by the way, 5 years from now, if you really do that, not only will it most likely, something coming from it, but it won't be the business you thought you were starting in the first place. It's definitely been the trajectory for us. But Apogee started as a mentorship program that myself and my business partner, a gentleman named Tim Kennedy, a lot of the listeners probably know who Tim is. If not, best way to put it is he's Captain America, but in real life. One of the best mixed martial artists of all time, one of the best special operators this country has ever seen. So he's a bad man, but he's one of the most brilliant humans I know. Amazing husband, amazing father. And so we built a mentorship program, virtual young men all over the world, 12 to 19, walking them through a roadmap of projects and challenges to build out their leadership portfolio. And every week they get to speak with some of the best men on the planet. So we're bringing in movie stars, we're bringing in athletes, we're bringing in entrepreneurs, we're bringing in all kinds of amazing humans to pour into these young men. And it's a direct mentorship program. But that evolved. We ended up adding a men's program after that, a women's program. We got the young ladies program about to launch. But they all culminate in also our physical campuses. So we're now at just over 100 either launched or on their way to being launched physical K through 12 programs for young men and young women. Programs where mom and dad get to go through Apogee Man and Apogee Woman too. It's education for the entire family. Everybody's going through these educational experiences and processes. We've got live events that are now being opened up. We've got um, two foundations to be able to move things from a nonprofit status to be able to help scholarship families to make these things accessible. We've got a university system on the way, and yes, that's a real university system, but it's real education accredited by Oxford and Cambridge, and a trades route in there too. And we got a payment processing system. Why? Well, because Stripe stole our money. And so that was one solution, was not to be woe is me. Let's create our own. But also, instead of us making money on that gap where like Stripe or PayPal make all their money, we take that money that companies, when they use us, we take that money and we pour it into one of those foundations, which is scholarships, so we can help more families. So all of those things are underneath the Apogee umbrella. So in short, we are not hurting for something to do. But it's a great mission, man.
Beautiful thing. How many students you had now?
Thousands. And we include in students includes, young heroes on our campuses. It includes the young men, the young women, it includes mom, dads, because they're all students as well in their own verticals. We've got a home education crew too. I forgot to mention that. We had about 200 families that we bring through home education. So we have thousands, literally thousands, and I don't even
Think,
quantify it.
sorry, you think you might even be in the hundreds of thousands at this point?
No, we're not that big yet. It's not, no, we're not in the hundreds of thousands yet. Give me 3 more years. Yes.
Tens of thousands, though?
Yes. Roughly. We're probably close to 10. Probably close to, yeah, I would say we're close to 10.
Legit, my guy. Legit. You guys are on a good mission, a very worthwhile mission that needs to get done. And you guys are I'm assuming you guys are using the classical model. Since I've talked with you, I think I've picked up definitely a classical vibe from you.
And that's an element of it, right? That's an element of it. But again, what should education be for? Sovereignty and freedom. And so the reality is we're presenting these roadmaps so that everybody can tackle these to ultimately figure out what does sovereignty mean for them and how do they go forward and get that. So classical model in some respect, but experiential always, it always trumps talking about an experience. That's a very different thing. Actually getting out and doing the work is a very different experiential process, right? You can do the classical model and very much articulate all the ins and outs of jujitsu. That's a different game than going and getting on the mat and having somebody whoop your ass and have to get better.
Yep.
Then you
Yep.
actually learn it. And then if you can articulate that while you also have the experience, well, then you're a dangerous human, right? And so it's that. It is, yes, the articulation, that is
Yeah.
great. The knowledge is great, but the application is everything.
I love that. I love that you guys take the experiential side because I think one of the things that I've had my issues with education is that lack of experiential. Where I mean, I remember being on the recruiting side with some tech companies where it's like, I'm getting these hot shot dudes who are coming in with computer science degrees that, yeah, they know the fundamentals of coding, and programming, but they don't know how to run a project.
No.
They've
I
no,
mean,
they don't know how to run a project. It's like the way that they simulate projects in the classroom is not actually how it's done in the workforce.
all theory. So again, there's the problem that I have with schooling and why I say it's not the same as education. Schooling is a religion in of itself. There's a very specific system to follow. The assumption is everybody needs to follow the same system at the exact same time. And then theoretically, you're capable of doing something afterwards. So that's provably false. Right. And so again, there's value in certain amounts of academia and wrestling with theory, but none of it means anything until you apply it and see what's real and what isn't. And you go back and adjust. That's a scientific method, by the way, but that's how it's supposed to look. I had a Yale MBA who told me on a call that my business models for running campuses, was not going to be profitable. He told me that while I had multiple campuses, we were in the 7 figures at that time, and everything was continuing to thrive, and we were growing and we were scaling, and ultimately asked him how many businesses he'd run, and the answer was zero, but he knew all the theory and the right. It's like, cool, man. He also had some things to say about parenting, and I'm like, how many kids do you have? Never had kids. Cool, but I was a perfect parent too before I had kids, and then I figured out how to parent. So, there's only so much. Again, not to bash academics as a working class. There's value there, but don't confuse it with I've done it.
100%. No, I've had those same experiences before. Well, there was I could finish with this point, but there was I think who was the guy who was the founder of several of the most popular clothing brands, Gap, and
Mm-hmm.
several of these. He spoke at Stanford Business School. I don't know if maybe you were there at the time when this guy spoke. He was at the Stanford Business School talking to the business students, and someone were asking him questions about, well, what would you recommend for me as a business student with, learning how to run a business? He actually looked at the students then in the face and said, you should probably drop out and start actually run and own a business.
Bingo.
If you want to actually learn about business, you should get out of business school and actually go run a business.
Bingo. That's it. I
Like,
mean, like that's it. And people go, well, no, but what do I need to do first? No, that is the first.
go
That
learn.
is, go do it. Go do the thing. What do I need to do before I go learn jujitsu? Nobody asked that question because what do? You go and you start doing jujitsu, and then you tie in all of the instruction afterwards because you have something to tie it to, right? That is how humans learn. We're city kids from the Bay Area of California. We came out here and bought a farm. And the way we started learning how to farm is to farm. And then you feel like, oh, that worked really well. Ooh, that died. Ooh, why did that potentially die? Maybe it's because the soil wasn't right here, because we put this plant here. We didn't know how to get away these bugs here, but how do you do, right? And so then you start asking the questions. You try something again, you see if it works, right? And you just have multiple iterations. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're like, wait a second, I'm actually really good at farming, right? Like that's how it actually works.
Yeah, and people have a hard time processing that. Like, I've gone through my thing that I've gone through in life where I've made my mistakes and I'm working on fixing those past mistakes that I've had with things. I've had success and failure within business so far, but more than anything, I look at all of it actually as true success because I learned something from it. It wasn't just things that happened to me. It was opportunities for me to actually process, this is why that happened. This is how I do it differently next time. This is how it works. Dude, I'm very confident in my belief of saying I can start a business in any industry because of the past I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take my past from me. You can't take my experience from me. You can't take my knowledge from me. I understand how the system works because I've gone through it.
Yep.
I didn't graduate business school, man. I graduated the school of actual starting at this point 6, 7 different businesses at this point, successfully exiting a couple, and a couple exiting only through just learning experience,
Bingo.
right? But they were all exits at the end of the day. And now I'm able to do what I do. Last thing I like to finish on, man, is something we always do on the show, which is allowing the guest to highlight something that really matters to them. I mean, we've highlighted so much already, but highlighting something you haven't already had a chance to highlight, and it could be a person, place, thing, idea, whatever, right? The floor is yours.
It's a really good question, man. There's a million places my mind goes, but based on the context of this um, conversation today, too, I would ask people to highlight for themselves. Anybody who's listening to this, highlight for themselves the one area of their life that they do not want to question. What is the thing that you do not question? I don't question my religion. I don't question freaking vaccines. I don't question men walking on the. I don't care what it is. What is the one thing that you are hardcore? I don't question this. And then I want you to go in and attack it and prove somebody else right and yourself wrong. I'm not saying you'll be able to, but I'm saying if you give that the effort that it deserves, it's called steel manning your beliefs. If you're brave enough to go figure out the hard questions that you need to ask yourself, uh, and you're brave enough to pull that string and take a look at evidence for the other side, you'll be on an interesting path. That'll likely be one of the most scary things you ever do if you really do it. But I don't know that there's anything that would be better. So that would be my challenge to everybody, is to go through and steel man the one thing that you feel like you cannot question.
I absolutely love that, man. I had that same thing recently where I always tell people my vote is up for grabs in this upcoming election. And I say that not because it actually 100% is, because I'm at a spot now where I do know who I'm voting for. But when I hear people who are polarized to one side or the other, I ask them the question, can you name 5 good things about the other side, 5 bad things about the other side?
Mhm.
And prove, and then show me a reason why that person should be versus why that person should be, and then flip it
Mm.
to really show that you're able to not just be down a rabbit hole of I believe this is never going to get challenged, it's never going to, you know what I mean, like can you actually view, because when you go down that road, I love that you challenge people, that because it forces you down a rabbit hole of like, okay, I have to be truly aware.
Yeah, I think a human should have to earn the right to have an opinion. And I think you earn a right to have an opinion by being able to argue against yourself better than anybody else can. That's how you earn it, is you can argue against your own points better than anybody else can. So you know you've at least come to it honestly. Hey, by the way, that's called critical thinking. All right, we all want people to critically think. That's what that means. It means thinking and challenging your own thinking. So that's what I would leave people with.
Love it, dude. Well, it's a privilege and an honor to know you, and it's a privilege
Honestly.
to have you on the program, and your words will touch whoever it's supposed to touch. There's always somebody that it's meant to touch, and that's why it was said.
Yeah, brother. 100%. Honor is mine, man. Thanks for having me in here.
All right, my guy. We'll talk to you later. Let's keep